Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the live sessions. I hope that you had fun in the last hour with the networking. I hope that you've met very interesting new people, new connections, and also that you've contributed to the pride of your country and that we can afterwards see some nice picture from your place of origin. We're moving forward, and I'm very, very glad that we have together with us Google. So Google is very committed to support the open source communities in developing great tools, and in particular for us, great websites. And they have reached out to the TYPO3 community to establish a relationship and to move forward in working together with us for the time to come and the years to come, hopefully. I'm very happy to welcome Andrey Lipattsev from Google and to give him the floor for the next hour. Andrey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for the invitation to be here. It's a tremendous pleasure and a joy for me to be addressing this diverse crowd from over 40 different countries today. I hope you guys have a tremendous day. Enjoyed all of the sessions. I'm seeing some of them. I'm going to watch some of them later. They all look tremendously interesting. We have been trying to work with the TYPO3 community for a little bit now. Some of my colleagues might be a little bit more familiar to you. I'm probably a new face. I'll try to make my presence a bit more felt throughout the next quarters and years, hopefully, and get to know all of you better. But let's start our meeting. Let's start our getting to know each other by me telling you a few things about what I think the future holds for us. And definitely jump in with your questions into the stage chat. We'll try to monitor those with the help of the organizers and get back to them as quickly as we can. In fact, don't worry about interrupting me. I'm here to answer your questions fundamentally because my slides don't matter so much. So please ask. I'll try to get back to them as quickly as possible. I'll try to save some time at the end for a proper Q&A as well. If we do run out of time, which I hope we do, because that's always a good sign, we'll try to capture all the questions that we get and find a way to get back to you with answers in some way. With that said, let's see how the technology holds up. Hopefully all our testing has not been for nothing, and we'll be able to start. All right. Well, so that's me, Andrey, slightly younger in this picture, not too much. I work on the web partnerships team at Google. This is the team that finds alliances across the world that help drive the web platform forward. And clearly, teams, ecosystems like TYPO3 are critical in our mission of making the web platform the ideal, the best place for both creators of content, ideas, products, services, and also their consumers. Find me anywhere you like. There are some links at the end of the presentation as well to get in touch with me. You'll see the reasons why. There's quite a few. And also, don't worry about screenshotting the slides or anything like this. As we said, first of all, the recording is going to be available. Secondly, there will also be a link to these slides available on SlideShare afterwards. So you'll get all the links, all the information you need. So now, lean back and enjoy, hopefully, and ask me lots of questions. Before we begin, let me share a quick story. Sort of 23 years ago, some of you maybe know this story better than I do, but I was inspired by it. 23 years ago, there was a guy called Kasper who sort of wanted to have his talent help people. And with passion and dedication, he gathered around himself a team of talented, passionate people who believed they could get content right. When I saw that message in the way that Kasper tells the story, it resonated with me in a way you can't imagine. It's so simple and succinct. It's something that we're trying to get to the heart of on the team that I work on all the time and generally at Chrome, that it resonated with me very strongly. Kasper's team made the initial dream an open source reality with solid business sense, acclaimed by some of the leading brands in the world, and it continues to be the platform of choice for thousands of businesses and organizations, well after Kasper himself has moved on to other things. That was the power of his dream. I hope that we can share a little bit of it today. The principles of getting content right remain just as poignant now as it was 20 years ago. What it means in practice, though, has kept on changing over the years. With new form factors, frameworks, devices, connectivity types, you name it, new user demographics, Generation Z, Generation Z, whatever you want to call them, coming online today, it's no longer the same as it was back, right? It's no longer the same as it was back then when Kasper first talked about it with his team. It's hard to get content right, harder than ever. It's hard to get it seen, hard to keep it relevant, hard to quantify and measure how right you got it. So what would he have done today if he were building TYPO3 from scratch? I think that in essence, he would have followed the same direction and let his passion and instinct be the inspiration. He would have strived to build a system that sets its user up for success. And more or less, that is what we're going to talk about today. The key elements for a successful strategy on the modern web, and above all, inspiration to collaborate together in the spirit of openness to get content right. Being successful on the web means achieving a sustainable strategy. We can use a sales metaphor here. Many of you might be coming from all sorts of different walks of life, more or less familiar with how sales operations work, but generally speaking, we are faced with a funnel where you start with a certain number of people whom in the sales world you call acquire, but generally speaking, who get to know the product or the service or the idea that you're trying to present. Some of them engage. Finally, a few of them convert and do whatever it is that you want them to do, buy something, subscribe to something, get back to you, send you an email, become your friend, whatever, play a game of chess with you. And then a few of them you retain, where the experience of converting on your web experience is so amazing that they like to come back to it over and over again. Now, the difference between any kind of funnel and a successful funnel is quite simple. A successful one looks wider. As a friend of mine, Alberto Medina, whom I respect very much, likes to say, it's a fat funnel. So what do we need to do to fatten the funnel up? For every step, from acquisition to retainment, to retention, there are a few key elements that you need to pay attention to. These are, of course, the content itself, performance, distribution, importantly, the investment you make, monetary or otherwise, in getting the word out there. With engagement, again, content is king. People want to engage with content that they don't like. Performance is top priority because if your website doesn't open, nobody will engage with it. Progressive web development allows you to add features to your website that take it to the next level. And throughout it all, you need to monitor how your users are engaging. Similarly with conversion, you need to choose the right monetization strategy. But you need to look at your performance, because if overall, even if your landing pages are great, but then the overall experience on your website degrades, it doesn't provide the functionality that users expect, they're not going to convert. And monitoring is exactly as, if not more important here than in the previous stages. And finally, for retention, again, people will keep coming back if the content that you're providing is great. They will keep coming back if the performance and the features, the capabilities of your website they've experienced are amazing. And you, on your part, need to keep track of all of that. So unsurprisingly, it looks like a lot of the same tooling, a lot of the same measures are needed across every stage of fattening the funnel. And we'll talk today about, serendipitously, 3 of them. We'll talk a lot, I was going to say a little, no, in fact, we'll talk a lot about performance, and specifically through the lens of Core Web Vitals. And if you haven't heard about them yet, I'll tell you what they are. We'll talk about bringing new content formats to the open web with web stories. And again, if you haven't heard about them, that's awesome. I have a chance to tell you something new. And finally, we'll talk about monitoring your success through something called Sidekick. This is going to be the shorter part of the presentation, but hopefully one of the more exciting ones throughout the entire presentation, but in particular, the last two parts of it. I think I'll try to identify areas for us to collaborate. And I can't stress enough how much we at Google look forward to connecting with all of you out there in the community to see how together we can build solutions that transform and transform what TYPO3 is today, and simply get content right. Let's talk about performance. It's multiple ways you can think about what page speed is. In fact, as an aside, you might have heard that Google Search has been using page speed as a factor in its ranking for a while now. It's multiple years. It's been first announced. I don't even remember back when. But the question always remained, like, what exactly is page performance? What exactly is speed? It's quite hard. Annie Sullivan on the Chrome engineering team, who is one of the key specialists in performance, has mentioned recently in the presentation that on her team, they have literally hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, sort of over 200 or 300 individual metrics that could be tracked to judge the performance of a web page. Clearly, it is useful in some context. It is completely and hopelessly impossible for a website owner to be able to stay on top of all of that. So we try to distill and boil down performance to three key aspects. The first of them is it happening? Is the experience on the page happening? Something actually going on. The second is it responding to the user? Once they actually see the content, are they able to interact with it? And the last one, the official wording for it is it stable? Like, is there layout stability? But I simply like to think of it in terms of Marie Kondo's approach to life. Does it spark joy in your users? The content that shifts around on the page, blogs that slide in, jump in, and then move everything around, preventing user interaction, they are the things in your cupboard that you want to throw away. You want to create experiences that are joyful. So let's quickly recap. How do we think about performance? It's appearance of content. Is it happening? It's responsiveness and ability to interact with it. It's joy or layout stability. Now, once we've defined that, we are able then to try to come up with a set of metrics that help us quantify it and measure it. And here are the three. Again, we'll stop on each of them in a bit more detail right now if you haven't heard of them before. In any case, it's quite easy these days to find a lot of information about Core Web Vitals on the web. But let's dive in a little bit into each of them. Largest contentful paint is all about happening, right? It measures when the page becomes useful, in the sense that the piece of content that you believe to be the most critical for your users on this page, whatever it might be your hero image, or it might be a block of text, or it might be a video, it might be something else. When does it actually appear on the page? At what stage the reason for which you created this page actually becomes apparent to the user? FID is all about, is it responsive? It's all about understanding how quickly after a user tries to push a button, tap a button, slide a slider, are they actually able to see a result coming back from that? Most of the time, the problem with this is that whilst your content has been rendered on the user's device, a lot of other things are still happening in the background that are preventing the user's interaction from having any meaning. Right? You know yourself this experience, unfortunately, quite well when the website is in front of you and you're trying to click a button or tap a button, but nothing is happening. Pretty much because the CPU is busy and is doing other things and it doesn't care about you. Well, you don't want to put your user in a position where they feel like you don't care about them. Finally, my metric of joy is cumulative layout shift, which looks quite simply at layout stability. There's a very simple formula on how it's calculated, definitely not rocket science. To illustrate, you want to avoid this experience. Right? You want to avoid your users from clicking on exactly the opposite button from the one they wanted to click on. That's the worst case scenario, obviously illustrated here, but I've seen this happen. It has nearly happened to me a bunch of times. And then you frantically click back or cancel, but generally speaking, very often it's too late. So CLS will not, just by measuring your CLS, you won't necessarily fix this, but by knowing what to measure, hopefully you'll be able to identify what it is that needs fixing. So here they are, the 3 core vital metrics that have been identified sort of earlier this year, potentially late last year, 2019, and have been presented and now available to you through various tools that we'll talk about in a bit more detail in a second. One thing I want to add here is that these are living metrics, and the Chrome team continuously keeps learning and listening to your feedback as well. So they will evolve. They will evolve in multiple ways. We'll potentially have other metrics being added here in the future. We'll potentially see the thresholds change, and thresholds will change for multiple reasons. There will be also a link to the methodology behind the current threshold. So if you like to dive deeper, you'll understand how exactly they've been set. But fundamentally, in a nutshell, they've been set looking at the real world. So my colleagues looked at a lot of user interactions with the websites through Chrome and split them into percentiles and just kind of went, well, we'll say, the top 10% are the best. So whatever value for this particular metric those websites have is going to be green. And then there's the 75th percentile, and then there's the rest. What's so special about these metrics anyway? One of the things that is critical to keep in mind when wrapping your head around why these ones have been chosen and the meaning they have for you is that, as opposed to some of the other ones that exist and have existed for a while, they are not based on what is sometimes referred to as synthetic or lab testing. They are based on something called real user monitoring. If you're not familiar with the concept, this is a good time to get familiar with it. I think even a quick research, even the Wikipedia article on real user monitoring is quite insightful if you've never come across the concept before. If you know it well, forgive me for stating the obvious, but it's about implementing tooling to understand how real users experience your web app. How fast is it for all of them, for the 90th percentile, for the 75th percentile, and so on. Not for you as a developer in your developing environment, but for them out there in the real world, on the real devices and the real network conditions. Just to emphasize the slightly obvious, performance is relative, therefore. It is no absolutely fast website. The performance of your website to a particular user will greatly depend on the device that they're on the network conditions that they're in. Therefore, you need to look at the full spectrum of users that you have in all the situations where they are. You can and should continue to measure performance metrics in the lab as well. You should introduce, in fact, Lighthouse, we'll talk about it in a second, you should introduce Lighthouse into your developing environment so you can continuously track the changes that occur to your performance as you make improvements. But it's never going to be the same as measuring what's happening with the actual users in the field. And real user monitoring is the equivalent of field. That's, those are interchangeable. When we talk about real user monitoring, we're talking about field data. We talk about field data, we mean data collected through real user monitoring. To recap, real user monitoring is a concept you need to wrap your head around fully and start implementing if you don't yet have it implemented. There are multiple third-party tools out there. I don't particularly want to advertise any single one. Again, a real quick research will uncover a sea of opportunities for you. And as promised, here are some links that explain exactly how we've landed on selecting these metrics and the thresholds for them. Again, don't rush screenshotting this or anything. The entire presentation is available to you. Let's talk about the tooling, as I promised, for a few minutes. You have sometimes, I might say, too many tools to measure performance, but hopefully you'll understand through this brief introduction the main difference between all of them and why do we need them all. The primary brand that I think many of you will be familiar with by now is, of course, Lighthouse. Hopefully, many of you not just know it, but also love it and love using it, both in the command line, through PageSpeed Insights, through Chrome DevTools, and wherever else Lighthouse becomes available, because it seems to become available in more and more places. Very squarely, Lighthouse is a lab testing tool, right? It does not look at your real users. It just pings a server and tries to get a response. And then whatever it gets, it shows you. Therefore, some of the metrics need to be replaced because some of them, like FID, don't make sense when there isn't a user interacting. And that's about all you need to know about it. It's broadly available, and it's a lab tool. Delving into what's available for us on the field side of things, we have, since a few years now, the Chrome User Experience Report. You have a quick link here to a sample data studio template that will help you get set up with a report for your own website really quickly. In a nutshell, Chrome User Experience Report is an anonymized, aggregated data set of all of Chrome's users that have consented to their data being collected in an anonymous way, that allows you to see what the experience was as long as they've been using Chrome. I've mentioned PageSpeed Insights before. PageSpeed Insights is the web interface, right? It's fundamentally a web page through which you can access both Lighthouse. With Lighthouse, you saw it's not the only place, but it's a place where a lot of people go to. So it's the place where you go to access Lighthouse. And since this year, also the place you go to get access to your data from the Chrome User Experience Report. It's important to notice on the Chrome User Experience Report side of things that not all websites will have the data in there, because as I mentioned, the data needs to be aggregated and anonymized. And some sites might not have enough traffic for us to be able to anonymize it correctly, and therefore the data won't be available. That makes it all the more important for you to try and track real user data on your own site. Google Search Console is an amazing tool. If you're not familiar with it, it's very helpful from many different angles, but in particular because it gives you insights about your own website that are not available to anybody else, right? Because where Chrome user experience needs to be aggregated and anonymized because it's publicly available, this is your private data, right? So there's going to be a lot more granular level of detail here. Chrome DevTools, as always, my favorite port of call to debug and understand the performance of any web page. And all the core web vitals are reflected there in the new testing environments. There's also an extension helpfully built by one of our colleagues to help you measure core web vitals in real time on any page, including your own, but pretty much anywhere. If I have it installed in Chrome, so as I browse, I just keep glancing at what this or that page seems to behave like for me in particular in that moment, because obviously that extension reflects only my own experience in the moment. And there's also a helpful small, very importantly, so it doesn't affect performance, small JavaScript library that you can dabble with to set up your own real user monitoring. I've mentioned that there are third-party solutions out there which might provide you with fancy dashboards and quite useful added value. But if you want to just try your hand at measuring core web vitals for your own user data set, I highly encourage you to check out the GitHub repo for this. And if you have suggestions or questions, I don't need to explain to you how open source technology works. So dive right in there, open your issues, submit your pull requests. Finally, in this section, a couple more links to help you and the decision makers at your organization understand the value of performance better. I didn't really have the time to dive into that part too deeply, but I didn't want to leave you entirely without background and the ability to both understand and speak about it better later. So do check out these studies. They literally put a dollar value on every millisecond that your web page takes to load. Now, as promised, the second part of what we're going to talk about today is this new content format. By now, I would think that vast majority of us watching and listening here are familiar with stories. There are the full screen immersive experiences with particular user interaction modes like tapping and swiping, and we see them on plenty of social networks. Video streaming services are launching them. Seems like these days, pretty much everybody and anybody is trying to launch their own version of stories. The current implementations focus on what is sometimes called ephemerality, basically stories coming and going and disappearing, and a very low barrier to creation. So pretty much enabling anybody, but importantly, not absolutely everybody, anybody who is a user of that particular social network or platform to easily create a story. We at Google believe that the stories format works well beyond the ephemeral use case, and it can become its own pillar in the media landscape, just like images and videos that came to the web transformed, and of course interactivity with JavaScript transformed the way we experience the web and now expectations of it. So can stories as a content format. They're cheaper than videos to produce. They're more engaging than a simple text article. So they're somewhere in this nice spot in between. And of course, they're more structured than video. Therefore, much better, much easier to understand for automated systems, including, of course, the crawler bots of your favorite search engines. Putting all of this together, it became obvious to us that we could introduce the concept of web stories. In a nutshell, right? And again, it's not too complicated. These are your stories hosted on your server. So these are just web pages. This is just web pages that have this format. These are HTML pages. They are in no way connected to any particular social network or anything like this. They're just yours. They make you money because there's no intermediary in between you and your user here. They drive traffic to your website directly because fundamentally they are your website. They are either on your website or in fact your entire website could be built exclusively out of stories, nothing stopping you there. And they can be as ephemeral as you want, just as like any web page could be. You can take it down in 20 minutes, or you can keep it there forever if it deserves to be. It is important to know that while I do represent Google, I fundamentally represent Chrome rather than search, and Google tries to internally draw a very strict and defined line between search and other products, so that our decisions on search are not influenced by the interests of any other product, and so that there's equity and equality of opportunity for everybody in the Google search results. However, of course, it's obvious that Google search tries to take advantage of all technological breakthroughs that happen on the web, and stories are definitely one of them. So in recent quarters, search has been also working on ways to use the fact that this content format has now become available and come up with creative new ways to surface it in the Google search results. For example, you have carousels for a certain limited number of queries. Right now, for instance, something like things to do in New York, if you're in the States, might trigger the appearance of such a carousel for you. Google Search is rolling it out gradually, so it might not be yet available in all languages across all locales. Certainly available in English in the US, in India, it's definitely available in Portuguese in Brazil, a few other places as well. When I say available, it's important to emphasize, these are web pages. And we discussed this before, they are scannable and indexable on their own merits. So they will appear in the results as the proverbial 10 blue links anyway. So any web story is absolutely well positioned to be present in Google search results. I'm talking here about new additional ways that search is using to surface stories because there's such an interesting new content format. And on top of Google search, of course, there's also Google Discover, the leftmost screen on your Android device, where information tailored to your own personal interests and aspirations and past history maybe is surfaced. So both of those are experimenting with ways to show you stories as well. And now as Bernie Sanders would say, once again, I come to you with a request for collaboration. There are great story creation tools out there on the web. Here are just a couple of examples. Again, you Google it, you'll find a few more. We've been working, my colleagues have been working with these companies over the past years, seeing good results overall, I'd say, of course, with all the, hiccups and reservations of a new development process. But overall, we can probably say, yep, if you go here, you end up building a decent story. Of course, the benefit of the format, I will remind you once again, maybe, I don't know, for the fifth time, that since these are just web pages, you can go and build your story on any of these tools and then simply bring it into your TYPO3 website, just like you would any other HTML piece of content. So that's amazing. However, what's less amazing about it is that it's not specific to TYPO3. We've worked with the community and the ecosystem at WordPress, recognizing the fact that every platform needs its own solution to create the story editor for WordPress. And not to beat my own drum, well, since it wasn't me doing the development, I think I'm free to say it. I think we nailed it. I think the story editor on WordPress is top of the range and beautiful and easy to use. More importantly, it's open source. And one of its stated objectives is that people take it apart, and use it for their own needs. So if you go explore this editor and how it works on WordPress, and you have ideas about how it could work on TYPO3, or if you have your own preferred way of bringing stories to TYPO3, please let me know. We are insanely interested in creating a solution together with this community that would enable web stories to become a first-class citizen in the TYPO3 ecosystem, where it's easy to create them, where they're well integrated in your development and content creation flows, where they natively feel like part of the output, not just something that the cat dragged in. And we can do this without you. I mean, I was going to say we could try, but we're not even going to try. It's the only way we can meaningfully do this is if we do it together with you. We come to the final part of our talk. I'm looking at timing-wise, we still have quite a bit of time for Q&A at the end, hopefully as well. So fire away with your questions in the chat if you like. I'll start preparing some for later. Let's talk about Sidekit. What is Sidekit? Remember, we talked about monitoring. So the third part was monitoring. Let's start at the beginning. Google has been critically aware of the need that its users and content creators have to monitor their web performance at every stage of the conversion funnel, and has built powerful monitoring tools. In fact, that suite of tools is broad enough for it to sometimes be confusing, and for some of these tools not to be familiar to all of you. I mean, I kind of on purpose didn't label any of these icons just to see how many of you I could get guessing as to what they represent. Even I sometimes need a hint or two to know what they are. When thinking about bringing the critical tools from this suite into the hands of developers that need them most, we've selected 4 for now at the initial stage. And I mean, this initial stage has been going on for over a year now, but still, we can call it initial. And brought them together into what is first and foremost a concept that is called Sidekit. Let's talk about the tools first and then the concept second. What are the tools? You have the Search Console, which helps you understand how your site behaves in search and how they're being discovered by users through search. In fact, recently it also has data on corporate vitals and many other aspects of how your web pages are performing. You have Google Analytics, with which I hope many of you are familiar, which helps you understand how your users are interacting with your sites, what's working, what's not working. You could also take a look at the performance of your website through Google Analytics. You can take a look at the bounce rates and many other things. Like it's a complex, interesting, and insightful tool. AdSense controls. If you chose to use AdSense, again, it's a big if, but if you did choose to use AdSense for monetization, you have the AdSense console to understand how your ads-based monetization is performing. And last but not least, PageSpeed Insights, which I mentioned previously, is a web interface to get information from Lighthouse and Chrome User Experience Report. It is also an API, and therefore a tool for you to understand deeply the performance of your site along the lines of keyword vitals and other metrics of performance, as well as to get informative advice. Now, all of these tools have been available for everybody for a while, but they're all disconnected. They all exist in their own separate shells and worlds. And for any webmaster, for any web creator who wishes to use all of them, they would have to get connected to all of them separately. Log in, create an account. Well, I mean, you create a Google account once, I guess, but you have to connect to your website using the various different disconnected ways of connecting these tools that exist for them. Some of them don't require any kind of connecting, like PageSpeed Insights. It just needs you to know how to use the API. And so we at Google came to understand that we need to provide a better, simpler way. And that's how the idea of Sitekit was born, where we can provide an umbrella interface for all of these sources of information to be shown to the user in the simplest way possible. And we started experimenting, like we often do, because it's for a while has been easier for us than many other ecosystems, but hopefully we're breaking out of that now. We started experimenting with WordPress. So the way I assume many of you are familiar with the WordPress ecosystem. If you're not very familiar, in some respects, it's not too dissimilar from the way TYPO3 operates, where you have extensions for TYPO3, you have plugins for WordPress. So the way to get something like this into WordPress is, well, one of the ways anyway, is through a plugin. So we built a plugin. Again, I say we, this was done in collaboration with the WordPress development community. And basically the key benefits here is that the plugin abstracts away the complexity of connecting to each service individually and enables you to, in a few simple steps, start getting the benefit of all the insights that these tools provide to you. And I mention insights again and again because what we're trying to get at here, and what the added value of the plugin on WordPress tries to get at specifically, is that we're not just throwing tons of numbers at you. We're literally trying our best to surface the numbers that enable your decision making in real time. The Search Console module extracts some of the high-level, most important numbers to be present directly in your dashboard. The same goes with analytics, where from all the wealth of data available in analytics, we try to highlight and bring to the fore the numbers that are the most powerful and useful in the moment. PageSpeed Insights API gives you the ability to not have to leave the comfort of your website management interface to get information about its performance. And as I mentioned before about AdSense, again, here within the comfort and familiarity of your own site management, you can get the key information about your monetization successes as well. Now, here for the second time, quite clearly, I am placing the question to you. How do we get this done for TYPO3? It is already possible, and I know that, to use analytics with TYPO3 websites. Of course, many of you are hopefully using it already. It's probably possible to use AdSense if you're using that. You know, you're probably already either ripping the revenue and also using the analytics tools to understand how to improve your campaigns. you are hopefully using Search Console. It's totally possible to connect a site built with TYPO3 to Search Console. And of course, as we talked about before, PageSpeed Insights is open and available for everybody, both in terms of the web interface and the API. So disparately, all of those 4 sources of information are there for TYPO3 users. But of course, what's the SiteKit solution for TYPO3 that will bring everything together, wrap it up nicely, and present it to the TYPO3 community in a way that works the best for you? We don't know yet. We really want to work with you on this. It's one of our key priorities for next year, is to figure this out, and we'll work as hard as we can to find allies in the community. And I'm reaching out to you right now. Please get in touch, share your thoughts, your reservations, your observations, your feedback on why this is a great idea, why this is a horrible idea, how it needs to look, how it needs to work. We don't want to, couldn't be further from our minds to create a solution and impose it on the TYPO3 community, because it's impossible to impose a solution on an open source community, and we understand and respect and know this, and we love this, given the open source commitment of Google and Chrome in particular. But also, it's not going to be successful, and we would like it to be successful, because we believe that SiteKit is a way to make monitoring easy, is a way to help people understand and achieve success. We're pretty much done. So let's recap. And the key point that I wanted to get across to you today was the concept of a fat conversion funnel. Whether you are managing or developing e-commerce projects or are an e-commerce project yourself, regardless, you're still converting people from something to something. You're converting them from folks who have never experienced your content, ideas, services, and products before, to people who are vehement advocates, share them, talk to their family about them. In fact, will spend their Christmas dinners talking about nothing but your products and your services. So that funnel exists for you, and you should strive to make it as wide as possible. And 3 powerful tools you have to impact the size of your funnel are working on the performance of your web app. And I offered you the option of looking at performance through the lens of Core Web Vitals with all the tooling that's associated with that. You need to work on the quality of your content, because that is going to be the determinant of whether your web project lives or dies. And I've presented to you a new content format that is more engaging, that is better suited for modern form factors, and connects better to modern audiences in the form of web stories. And we talked about the importance of monitoring at every single stage of the process, and the need to simplify such an important process as well. And hopefully I've inspired you to start thinking creatively about ways in which we could bring the SiteKit concept of unifying and simplifying key monitoring tools and bringing them to the TYPO3 user base. As promised, here's the link to this slide. Hopefully easy to remember. If not, we'll pause here for a few seconds to give you all a chance to take a screenshot and write it down. And with that, let's keep talking. I certainly don't want the end of my presentation today to be the end of our conversation. Find me anywhere you can find me. I've set up a special email alias to hear from you all as well. I'd be delighted to hear from you with all of your ideas on stories, SiteKit, and anything else. I'm just interested to hear from you. I know there's going to be a tremendous presentation, which I'll miss today live, but I'll definitely catch up on later in a recording on the future of PWAs on TYPO3. I'm actually happy that I didn't have to talk about it today, because it's a topic that I get really easily excited about, and I'm really happy that there's a bunch of folks who are just as excited to talk about it as I am. So if you want to talk to me about PWAs, by all means, let's talk about that as well. Anything else that is related to web experiences, to making the web live up to its promise of staying open, staying free, staying empowering people in all of the most remote and most connected corners of the world to come together and build something that nothing else that humanity has ever worked on even closely compares to. So let's get content right together. Thank you. Ronald commenting something on a funnel versus flywheel. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a never-ending circle with the people you've retained, sparkling more acquisition. Sidekit and the new TYPO3 dashboard. I don't know enough about the new TYPO3 dashboard. So Ronald, can't wait to hear more from you on that and the rest of the TYPO3 team as well. I'd love to explore that and what that means. Yes, to Ronald's question on Sidekit being kind of WordPress oriented, it is. So that's what I'm saying. Sidekit is a concept. How do we bring the best of monitoring solutions to everybody everywhere? And we've started by building a solution together with the WordPress ecosystem. We now want to build it everywhere. So partly the reason why I'm here as well is talk to you about it, spark some ideas. How do we do it? Good thing about it, again, it's open source. If you are sort of interested enough, and if you have the right frame of mind, grab the plugin from the open repo, pull it apart. It's PHP. It's all PHP, right? Everywhere. So PHP everywhere. Elephants. So maybe we could just reverse engineer it and have it launched before Christmas. Maybe it will take slightly longer. There are some complications there that to actually get it right, to get the key element of the seamlessness of connection. That's the crux of the matter. Yep. And exactly, Olivier is saying that we're working with Benny Mac. Ronald, by all means, I think we should all work together on this if you have more ideas. And also, more importantly, it is easy to think of Sidekit as a competing solution to SEO extensions or analytics extensions and widgets. I don't think that it should be. I think it's a complementary solution, and that's how we should treat it. Because while there is an element to Sidekit that is about presenting information and insights, for sure, for me, by far, the largest value proposition is that seamlessness of connection, is the removal of the need to go to 4 different places to connect to 4 different APIs and then have to switch between 4 different websites to get the information that you need, which is also unrelated to each other in all those interfaces. Just think about that, right? You have the Page Speed Insights API, you have the Search Console API, the Google Analytics API, you have the AdSense APIs, and they're all in different places and you don't get them all together. So connecting to them nicely and seamlessly and easily serves 2 purposes. One, to the majority of our users out there, it surfaces the existence of these monitoring tools potentially for the first time ever, right? So that's very important. So they don't just discover, oh, there's analytics and I don't know anything else. They will discover, oh, there's analytics, but there's everything else around it as well that gives me a more holistic picture of how my website is performing, number one. And I don't need to spend like 3 hours of my life trying to place pieces of HTML code from here to there to get my website connected to every single one of those services. But in a few simple clicks and giving us a few simple permissions inside my TYPO3 site management console, the dashboard, I just get connected. Now, for now, that's clearly just a vision, but that's the vision that I would love to work with you all on making a reality. And yes, Ronald, let's definitely talk. Hello, Elias. Hello from Granada. Well, hello from Zurich. And hello, Gunhok. Hi. And hello, Antonio. Hola. Daniel is reposting a question here for me. Does Google already have developed collaborations with other open source communities? Are there lessons learned on how to grow such partnership? Yeah, I think I'm not remiss to say that we do. We have a great collaboration in WordPress, working with hosting providers and development agencies, working with both the .org side and the .com side. We're making steps towards having these collaborations across Drupal, Joomla, other communities. This year have started for the first time investing in sponsorship for open source communities. Not to be so US or EMEA centric, great examples of collaboration with open source projects like ECCube in Japan as well. EasyCube, in fact, EasyCube was one of the first examples of SideKit's concept. Look it up, just Google it, it'll be easy to find. So SideKit for EasyCube, it's a Japanese CMS, so a lot of this is going to be in Japanese, but Google Translate will help you. They've done what we just discussed. They've taken SideKit as a concept, adapted it to the EasyCube ecosystem, and launched it as a product that now lives there as well, right? So we can talk about SideKit existing not just on WordPress now, but also EasyCube. Of course, the sizes of the ecosystems are hard to compare, but conceptually, that's one of the ways we're driving it. Lessons learned is that, but hopefully we had this mindset from the start. We want to be an equal partner to all of you, in the open source development of the open web. It's at the heart of Chrome. It's at the heart of Google. Without the open web, Google is nothing. It's some things, but they don't work without the open web. And therefore, I am personally deeply passionate about what the web is and what it stands for, what it means in terms of freedom and access and creativity that it sparks. And I'm truly blessed. I don't often use that word, but in this case I do. I'm blessed to be surrounded by colleagues who share this passion and this vision. And therefore for me, it was like the first time I joined an open source community event, it was like walking into a candy store, immersing myself into this environment surrounded by like-minded people and realizing that it's not just one company that espouses this philosophy, but it's whole ecosystems of companies and organizations. So the lesson learned is that we need to keep this open mindset. We need to keep this focus on the user, getting content right, and collaboration. It's collaboration, and creativity, and learning from our mistakes. If we try something and it doesn't work, if you tell me, all of you together, jointly or separately, tell me, what, this whole idea with introducing Google services to TYPO3 as a package is a crazy idea, it doesn't work, fine. We'll go back to the drawing board. We'll think of something else. Let's talk about stories. That's how are we going to do that then? Are we just satisfied with the fact that they exist out there? Do we want to bring them into TYPO3 specifically? So we'll learn by doing together with you, only together. Edward wants to be counted in. All right, we got you. Well, you're on the record now. Olivia, thank you for providing the content on the RFP and an approach that's the ensures sustainability. Of course, we have to think through all the angles here, right? Investment, development, exactly. The link for the presentation, Dio is asking for it. Let me dig it up from my slides. 1 second, I'll just paste it in the chat. Here we go. Right, so that's now in the chat. Lots of thanks from everybody. Now it's thank you for your patience with me today. Thank you for the audience. Yes, Ronald, launching anything by Christmas 2020 would be nice, but it's been such a year that anything is possible. Who knows? I've run out of questions in chat. I don't know if there's any more. Happy to stay on for a few minutes or give everybody a chance to get a bio break before the next sessions. You let me know. Oh, Thomas is asking, how does authentication work with SideKit? Is it person bound? Not sure what you mean by person bound, but fundamentally, I suppose you could say that, right? So you have, as a developer, you have your Google account, right? The way it works with WordPress, at least, it could work in different ways, but that's the way it works with WordPress and EasyCube, I believe, as well. You authorize the platform, and that's the key bit. That's for the user, that's seamless. For the platform, that's difficult. You authorize the platform to do the authentications and the verifications with all these various APIs and services on your behalf, and therefore you just kind of tick a button, enable it, and then the magic happens. And it's this magic that we need to work on the TYPO3 end to make sure that this is indeed a seamless process. You don't have to go through all sorts of hoops and 5 different landing pages to enable everything. Otherwise, it's it's auth. Like if you did the process underlying it all is auth. Yeah, it's Google account bound, of course, because there's a Google services. Yep. Yeah. Thomas is saying that this kind of auth client that you grant permission to interact on your behalf. again, as always, in reality, more complicated than this and probably more complicated than I can properly explain. In a nutshell, though, yes. And that's the essence that I love about it. That's this concept bit, but we would love, and that's what makes it possible to talk about this concept in any ecosystem. Right? It's this ease of connection. And when I started talking about how it shouldn't be a competitor to existing widgets and extensions, the value added from those extensions in the recommendations that they provide, in the insights that they give you, is enhanced by the fact that it becomes easier to connect to these services. That's how I see this. Right? So we hope that the ecosystem of those extensions and widgets flourishes because of the introduction of Sitekit. And so far, for example, in WordPress, I would say that's what we've been seeing. In WordPress, over the year and some that it exists, it has already seen over 1 million installs. And it keeps growing. People seem to be finding usefulness in it. Didn't get any questions about Web Vitals from you all. Either it's crystal clear or all of your websites are really fast. I hope they are. But I spent more than half of my time talking about them, so that's not for no reason. Something I didn't mention because I didn't want to dwell on it too much, but next year Google Search will start using Web Vitals explicitly as a ranking signal. So I highly encourage you to take a look at how your website looks right now, including through Crux or maybe your own real user monitoring, and start thinking how we're going to do that. Part of our collaboration with Benny, Olivia, and others is on finding ways to make TYPO3 websites faster overall, but also providing the right guidance to you all folks. So you can look forward to more on that later as well. I see Roxana pasting the link for the Rwanda session room already. So I think we're close with 2 minutes from time. Your attention. Thank you so much for your passion. Thank you so much for being there and doing what you do. It's a tremendous honor and a privilege for me to be becoming part of this community. I look forward to working with you all many months and years to come. Thank you.